Trey Hendrickson is reportedly interested in playing for the Buccaneers, and Adam Schefter believes they could be a great fit for him on and off the field. That could lead to some interesting negotiations.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'd like to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. I am your host, James Yarcho, writer over at Bucs Report. I have been covering the Buccaneers for over a decade, and I am here with you every Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. We are going to dive into a new pass rusher popping up on the trade market and begin our free agent positional previews by taking a look at cornerbacks. That is all coming up in a little bit, but I want to start things off with an interesting report from Adam Schefter. He appeared on the Pardon My Take podcast and said that he believes that Trey Hendrickson would love to be a Buccaneer. Schefter said, quote, "I think he would love to be in Tampa. I think he would love to be in Tampa. He lives in Ponte Vedra. I don't think the Jaguars have the requisite cap room for him. Tampa would be a great fit. I think in a perfect world, Trey would like to stay in Florida, no state income tax, but he's also open to going to the best possible situation. If Trey has a pick, I think he'd like to end up with the Bucs, but we will see if it works out that way," end quote. Now, that is some interesting phrasing at the end here, because when you think about it, Hendrickson does have a choice. The big question is whether or not the Bucs are interested in him. That's where Trey's choice doesn't become an actual choice anymore. Now, when we combine what we talked about yesterday and the Bucs going all in at edge rusher, I don't know why the Bucs wouldn't be interested, but as we all know, price is what's going to drive this entire thing. That said, some of these players aren't necessarily going to go to the highest bidder. We know that about Mike Evans. He may not take the highest bid. He may take the best opportunity. We saw it with Chris Godwin last year. He passed on the highest bid to stay in Tampa. Now, Trey Hendrickson also is looking for the best opportunity. So if Hendrickson is truly that interested in playing for the Bucs, they might not have to outbid other teams. They just need to be close enough to convince Hendrickson that he's going to be in a better situation than whoever the highest bid is. He's going to be on a better team and have a chance to compete for a Super Bowl. And by taking a little bit less with Tampa, they can go out and still add more players in free agency that he can team up with on the defensive side of the ball. Not to mention, as Schefter said, he wants to be in the state of Florida, and he already knows the benefits of no state tax living out there by Jacksonville. Granted, that doesn't always sway someone because the no state income tax only accounts for the games that you play in the state of Florida, but it means that about half of his games won't be taxed, and that can help make up for some of the lost wages that he would have if he chose to play in Tampa for less money than he was offered by another team. But then you have to take into consideration what kind of defense he would be playing. For a guy like Trey Hendrickson, this would be an ideal situation. He would be out there in a defense where he saw Shaq Barrett and JPP dominate, and they would be looking for him to take on that kind of role, not just in terms of production, but also in terms of leadership. He would be the key pass rusher. He has a solid complement on the other side in Yaya Diaby, and let's be honest, it would be nearly impossible for him to go to a team that has a worse defensive situation than the one that he just played on the last couple of years. So while the current prediction is for Hendrickson to make around $25 million a year, he could very easily take less just to be in Tampa if that truly is his preferred destination. Money meets situation meets desire. All of that adds up to Hendrickson being very much in the fold when free agency opens next week. And you know Schefter isn't throwing the Bucs out there randomly. Like, let's take a step back here and think about where this is coming from. That is not how Adam Schefter operates. That is not how he conducts his business. And him throwing a team out there like the Bucs is because he's heard something. He has been told something about Hendrickson mindset in this process, and he is saying it because it's a fact that Trey wants to play here. That doesn't mean this is the only place that he wants to play. It isn't like it's Tampa or bust for him. But Schefter floating his name out there is because that's what either Trey or his agent wants him to do. That they want to try to make this happen. Now, some are going to say that they're doing this to drive up his price on the open market. I fully disagree with that for all the reasons that I've already pointed out. I don't think the Bucs are in the Hendrickson sweepstakes for the price that he's projected to go for. I think that maybe they haven't heard anything about the Bucs being interested, and this is their way of saying, hey, he wants to play here. We can be in your price range, but you need to show that you want him. We can probably work something out. Now, on yesterday's show, I talked about how I don't think the Bucs are going to go after him based on the cost and the injury history. But I also said that if the Bucs get him, I would be excited. Hendrickson is a defense-changing player, but he's also an injury risk. He's a little bit older. He's coming off of a season where he only played 7 games. Now, in Trey's defense, he played in all 17 games the 2 years prior to that, and he had 17 and a half sacks in each season. But he missed games in the 3 previous seasons as well. Not a ton, but he missed time due to injury. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Bucs, hearing this, getting wind of this, and going, all right, you know what? We're going to offer him a little bit less in terms of AAV compared to what we think his market is going to be. But then we're going to hit him with some incentives to try and make up for it. Bonuses based on 10 and 15 sacks in a season, snap percentage or total snaps, games played, so on and so forth. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to get him for $17 million a year or something like that, but you're probably looking at a 2-year deal if he were to come to Tampa. Again, this is an older guy. He'll turn 32 during the season. And if you remember, Reddick is the same age and was coming off of a bad year on the field with contract problems off the field, eerily similar to the Trey Hendrickson situation now. So the Bucs could very well wind up in that similar situation and might see some of the red flags that they overlooked. I don't want to say ignored, but they overlooked in order to sign Haason Reddick. The difference here, I would contest, is that Hendrickson had more sustained success over the course of his career than Haason Reddick did. He's a more proven commodity. So this isn't going to be we believe that he can return to form and recapture the magic that he had in Philly kind of situation. This is Trey has shown time and time again that he can ball out. He was on pace for double-digit sacks last season before suffering the injury. He's been one of the best and most feared pass rushers in the league over the last several years. We think that he's going to add a lot to this defense kind of situation. And the last thing that I'm going to note here, if you want Mike Evans back and you're okay with paying him big money at 33 years old, coming off of a down year where he was injured, why wouldn't you want Trey Hendrickson, who is coming off of a down year where he was injured, and why wouldn't you be willing to pay big money there? Edge rusher, as you all know, I know, everybody knows, is the biggest need on this team. So if you have the opportunity to go out and sign one of the best ones that are going to hit the market, why wouldn't you do it? You'll believe it or not, both of these guys carry risk due to age and injuries. But other than that, it doesn't make a ton of sense to want one and not the other if, and keyword if, you're able to remove the sentimental attachments that you have to one of these guys and look at it strictly based on football and on-field production. So, yes, Trey Hendrickson would not be the long-term solution, but he's the guy that you can sign, for 2, maybe even 3 years if you have an option year there for the third one. If Trey comes in and balls out, you still turn around and you draft a Gabe Akis or a Zion Young in the second round. Now you have your young future pass rusher without all the pressure who is able to learn from one of the best in the NFL, can be a rotational player, can start to get his feet wet, but the pressure isn't there for him to start and produce double-digit sacks immediately. They can grow into that role while also getting to see the field throughout the season. Another edge rush name pops up on the trade market that would fit what Bowles wants to do. We talk about that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. March is a time to celebrate women, especially around International Women's Day, and to recognize just how much they carry at work, in relationships, in families, and in all the unseen roles they step into every single day. It's easy to celebrate that strength, but it's just as important to make space for their emotional well-being, and honestly, that goes for all of us. The roles we play, the expectations we carry, the pressure we don't always talk about, therapy can help with all of that, creating balance, setting healthy boundaries, and supporting your overall well-being. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served worldwide, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, and it works. Fill out a short questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and if it's not the right fit, you can switch at any time. Your emotional well-being matters. Find support and feel lighter in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You can now try the Everydayer Club for free. Lots of content coming as we're about to hit free agency. And then I have some special things planned for the draft for the all access members. That's coming up at the end of next month. So give it a shot. Use code free agency, all caps, all one word, to get a free month of the Everydayer Club. If you sign up for an annual membership, you are going to get 1 month off of that cost. The Minnesota Vikings have officially entered the chat of teams looking to potentially unload an edge rusher via trade. According to multiple reports, the Vikings are open to trading Jonathan Greenard due to their cap situation. Now, the Vikings they're in the worst cap situation in the NFL. They are $46 million over the cap, and they have to be compliant by next Wednesday when the new league year begins. That means unloading salary, restructuring current contracts, etc. This is a team that's looking for a quarterback because I know, and I think they know, J.J. McCarthy ain't it. It's going to be really hard to get one of those guys. You know, a guy like Kyler Murray, Tua Tagovailoa is expected to become available. You're not going to get one of those guys if you don't have any cap space. So that's where Greenard comes in. Trading Greenard will free up a little bit over $12 million in cap space, which is a start. It's not going to solve the whole problem. And the Vikings are not going to want a player in return. Greenard is 29. He has 2 years left on this deal, with $4 million of his salary for this season becoming guaranteed on the third day of the new league year. Now, the Vikings can also cut him and still free up that money. Either way, they're going to take on nearly $10 million in dead cap, and they're going to free up a little over $12 million in cap space. So a lot of teams may sit and wait, knowing that what the Vikings are up against and not have to give up draft capital to get it. That, in turn, means that the bidding war here is not going to get out of control. This is not going to be a Max Crosby situation. I'm thinking at best, if you're the Vikings, you're getting a day 3 pick. That's what the market is going to dictate for him, because everybody knows that you have to clear this cap space. You have to make moves. Now, I don't know about you. I would be more than willing, if I am Jason Light, to send over a 5th rounder in order to land a guy that has double-digit sacks in 2 of the last 3 seasons. No, he's not going to get the headlines that Hendrickson or Crosby or Bradley Chubb would, but this is a pretty solid pass rusher that dominated in his final year in Houston and his first year in Minnesota. Last year, he only played 12 games. He had just 3 sacks, but the Vikings were absolutely terrible. I mean, really, really bad. This is a place in Tampa where he could bounce back and return to that double-digit sack form. Key word, though, is could. This is the sticking point for me. Greenard doesn't have the sustained success of some of the other guys that we've talked about. In 6 seasons of his NFL career, he has 12 and a half and 12 sacks in 2 of those. The other 4 combined, 13 and a half. He has played a full season 1 time in his career. These are the red flags that are going to pop up after what happened with Hassan Reddick last year. Over at Sports Illustrated or SI.com, Eva, and I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this last name. My sincere apologies as someone whose last name constantly gets butchered. Eva Geitheim wrote about the teams that should pursue a trade for Greenard. The Bucs, of course, were one of them. And Eva said, quote, similarly to a number of teams on this list, the Buccaneers defense fell short of expectations in 2025, and one of the best ways for Tampa Bay to improve that unit is by bolstering its pass rush. Greenard has played under a creative defense with Brian Flores and could join another complex scheme with Todd Bowles and the Bucs, end quote. LOL at calling the scheme complex when Todd Bowles laughed at all of us in the scrum at the scouting combine and said that the defense is not complex. It's not complicated. Agree to disagree on that one, Todd. The other teams listed that should be making the call to the Minnesota Vikings were the Commanders, Cowboys, Bengals, Ravens, Panthers, and 49ers. Now, according to Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, the Vikings are looking to get a day 2 pick in the trade. Good luck with that. I'm also looking for Carrie Underwood to come knocking on my door and asking me out to dinner. Wanting ain't getting. When other teams know this situation that you're in and you have to unload salary in order to become cap compliant, your leverage is out the window. You know, I just said it moments ago, teams are more likely to sit and wait you out so that you cut him rather than giving up any draft capital at all. So if you're Minnesota, wouldn't you rather have something for him than nothing at all? You know, especially in a draft class that's really deep at some of these positions where you could get a solid player on day 3. It might not be a Greenard level player, but it could be a guy that would at least contribute in some fashion. And again, that's better than getting nothing at all. That's better than having to cut him. And once you've put out the news that you are willing to trade him, it's really hard. I mean, well, it's impossible to put that genie back in the bottle, but it's really hard to repair the relationship then when the guy is coming to work knowing that you wanted or were willing to get rid of him. To me, I would completely understand and support the decision to give up a 5th rounder in order to secure Greenard. That addresses the biggest need on your team for sure. However, I think the Bucs' best course of action is to wait this one out. If he hits the market, you can probably get him cheaper than what his current contract is if you miss out on bigger names like Trey or Chubb or Mafe or Owe. You know, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, right? I get that. And giving up a day 3 bit of draft capital ensures that you don't miss out, that, you know, these other guys that you're pursuing decide to sign elsewhere, and now all of a sudden you're left holding the bag and you have nothing that has improved your edge rush. On the flip side of that coin is I do think that the Bucs are going to land their guy one way or another. Maybe that's Trey Hendrickson. Maybe that's Bradley Chubb. You know, when I hear all in on a pass rusher, I understand that has a wide range of meanings, but I don't think they're going to go the Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa route. At least that's not their preference. I think their preference is to get the Trey or the Chubb or the Mafe. I still believe that a Crosby trade is out the window. I just don't see Jason Light giving up that much draft capital and taking on a $30 million plus, average value of a contract. So I think the Bucs land their guy one way or another, and they can probably do so without facilitating a trade. But again, if that's the asking price, you know what you're getting. you know that you have one already. You're still going to draft one, but at least that position has been addressed with a guy that can come in and potentially be a difference maker for you. Getting into some free agency positional previews, and we are going to start with cornerback. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
Wrapping things up here on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, and over the next couple of shows leading up to the negotiating window on Monday, we are going to dive into some positional previews as to who the Bucs could be targeting and realistic players that they could sign. We're going to start that off with cornerback. Now, Bowles and Light made it pretty clear at the scouting combine that they believe in their young duo of Benjamin Morrison and Zion McCollum to be the starting corners in this defense. Jacob Parrish had a great rookie season as the slot corner. Todd Bowles said he is going to remain the slot corner, but you're still going to need to bring in at least one, maybe two guys to replace Jamel Dean and Kendall Vildor for depth and special teams play. You don't want Mac and Mo out there on special teams. I'm sure many of you remember Carlton Davis getting hurt a couple of years ago while on punt coverage. That's not what you want to see for your starting corner. So you have to build up that depth there, losing two big pieces. So if you have your starters locked in, and keep in mind the Bucs only had a formal interview with one corner at the combine. While that doesn't say that they aren't looking to draft a corner, it doesn't speak to the positional need that they obviously felt when speaking with linebackers, edge rushers, tight ends, and defensive linemen. But if you have your starters locked in, you're looking for depth, which means you're not signing the top players available. You know, guys like Trayvon Diggs, Jonathan Jones, Greg Newsome, Roger McCreary, Alontae Taylor, these guys are not going to be the direction the Bucs go in. That's not going to be where their focus is. It's going to be more like guys like Jimmy Ward, Tre'Davious White, Adoree Jackson, Chidobe Awuzie, guys like that can step in and play meaningful defensive snaps if you need them to, but otherwise will be used on the punt and kick units. They're going to cost around $2 million or less. And if the Bucs go out and spend big money on a corner, that's because they fed us all a bunch of baloney at the combine and really did not have the faith in the young guys that they said that they did. The caveat here is that they could spend big money on a multi-year deal if they want to protect themselves against Morrison not developing the way that they had hoped and continuing to be injured, and or McCollum's breakout season being nothing more than the outlier rather than what he's truly capable of. I don't think that would be the case because, first off, the pass rush being improved will make the secondary look better. And then second, you can pivot away from McCollum after the season if he doesn't bounce back. He may have gotten a big extension last year, but the Bucs can get out after 2026 with only $2 million in dead cap. So you can wait that out and readdress the position next offseason. If you have to, you shuffle some things around. You have Morrison on one side. You put Jacob Parrish on the other. We saw that he can play outside corner as well. You move Christian Izien into the slot corner position where we've seen him excel. Now, the Bucs didn't tender Christian Izien, but they do want to bring him back. I think that's something that ends up happening. So you can still shuffle around if you have to, if McCollum ends up being a liability. The same can be applied to Benjamin Morrison, right? You move Parrish to the outside, Izien's in the slot. And, then McCollum is on the other side. I think the Bucs go for, I don't want to say a lesser known player, kind of like what they did with Kendall Vildor, but you have an extremely young cornerback room. And with Jamel Dean leaving, you are losing that veteran leadership and knowledge. So it would make sense that the Bucs bring in someone that has not only been on successful teams, but someone that's a little bit older and can help these guys. Someone that brings that veteran presence that is walking out the door with Jamel Dean. So I look to someone like Tre'Davious White. He makes a lot of sense for the Buccaneers. He's a former first-round pick, but he just isn't what he used to be. He has played one full season since 2018, and while he's still capable of starting, that isn't likely going to be the role that he finds somewhere if he hits, if he starts looking around in free agency. He's going to be a rotational or a depth piece for any team that basically isn't a cellar dweller. So if he's just looking for money, and, then he's going to end up being on a bad team if it's a combination of money and, being able to be a starter. He's looking for a chance to win. If he's looking for a chance to be a piece, not the piece, he's going to take less money with a diminished role, but still being part of the defense. He could absolutely decide to stay in Buffalo. That's where he spent his entire career. But you do have a coach like Marcus West that he does know and does have a relationship with, who is now on the Bucs staff because of their years together in Buffalo. He isn't going to cost very much at all. Having him there in the rotation and as the next man up means that he's still going to see the field, just not as a full-time starter. And for someone that has struggled with injuries, that's really not a bad deal. The other name that jumps out to me a little bit is Chidobe Awuzie. Now, he's bounced around, but he has played on some good defenses over his career. He spent 4 years in Dallas, 3 years in Cincinnati, a year in Tennessee, last year with the Baltimore Ravens. Again, not a full-time starter. He has started 86 games in his 9-year career, with the most being 16 for the Cowboys back in 2019. Now, he can step in and play, and, he can fill the void if you need him to. If a player goes down, if a player isn't performing, you have that experience and plenty of it. But this is a player that has been on some successful teams. He went to a Super Bowl with the Bengals. He started 14 games for them that season while having his career high in interceptions and passes defense during that Super Bowl run. He's not going to demand a ton of money. He's not going to demand to be a starter over one of the young corners on this roster. What he is going to do is provide leadership and knowledge that the Bucs need from a veteran in that position group. He is going to come in knowing what it takes to win because he's been there. He's done that. And he has been on successful teams that made solid playoff runs. I think a player like Awuzie would be what Jason and Todd are looking for on the open market to come in and help this team. That also doesn't mean that they won't look to draft a guy. Jason's been pretty good about finding corners on days 2 and 3 of the draft. Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, Zion McCollum, Benjamin Morrison, they're all day 2 and 3 picks. Even at safety, if you want to expand the secondary to encompass both positions, Antoine Winfield Jr., Mike Edwards, Jordan Whitehead, Tyke Smith, Christian Izien, those are day 2, day 3, and undrafted guys. So the Bucs not having a ton of formal interviews at the Combine, while important, doesn't mean that they won't take one. They still have 30 in-person visits that they can have with prospects, as well as unlimited visits with prospects that are considered local. For those of you that don't know, a local prospect means that if a player played in high school or college within a 50-mile radius of that NFL team, they don't count against top 30 visit restrictions. So you're looking to bring in at least one, maybe two, and I think similar to edge rusher and similar to linebacker, you're looking at bringing one in free agency, and you're looking to draft one. You draft one, it's probably going to be a little bit later of a pick. I would say probably as high as day 3, depending on, or round 3, depending on how the board falls. But that is the guy that is going to develop. They're not going to be an instant starter. You bring in a free agent, that is going to be your third outside corner to come in off the sideline when needed based on injuries or struggles or whatever else the case may be. Either way, both of them have to contribute on special teams, or they're not going to be able to help the team the way the Buccaneers need them to help. That is going to do it for this episode. Please check out everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs, Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Bucs in both of those places. Subscribe on YouTube with the notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcast. Join the Everydayer Club. You can click the link in the show notes. Go to lockedonbucs.supercast.com. Use promo code FREEAGENCY to get 1 month free. That's all one word. If you want to support the show, but you don't want to join the Everydayer Club, it's real simple. Like this episode on YouTube. Leave a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts. It does help other Buccaneers fans find the show. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.